turned to Jude, and I had, right as the music started up, I was going to look. I'm pretty sure the 1995 NASB did not have the word Jesus at Jude 5. I'm pretty sure of that. I tried to fire up Accordance. Windows went wonky, and it didn't work, and so I gave up on it. But here's the Legacy Standard Bible here. Now, I want to remind you, though you know all things, that Jesus, having once saved a people out of the land of Egypt, subsequently destroyed those who did not believe. Now, if you're new to the program or it's been a while since we talked about these things, that is up until just under 3 weeks from now, I think. Yeah, that's probably the most interesting and important textual reading in the New Testament that has been directly impacted by something we've talked a lot about in the past. I haven't talked a lot about it recently, but I will be again soon, Lord willing, and that is something called CBGM, the Coherence-Based Genealogical Method. We've talked about it in the program before. I still want to, in the future, we'll be talking about it more, as I said, but it's a new set of tools. At the very minimum, it is a massive amount of collation work on manuscripts. It would certainly be the largest database of readings from manuscripts for the New Testament that's ever been put together. There's no question about that. And basically what CBGM does is seeks to establish or work within how manuscripts are related to one another on the basis of coherence and the genealogical relationships, dealing with a process where a lot of the intermediate manuscripts are missing. You might have one manuscript and we might have its grandparent and something like that, but it's very difficult to create a what's called a global stemata of all of the manuscripts because so many are missing. I mean, that's how things were passed down by hand for centuries and centuries and centuries. Anyway, CBGM data has been available for only literally a couple of books in the New Testament for a while now, and Jude was one of them. The pastoral epistles had been done a number of years ago, and what's called the Editio Critico Maior, which is it's called ECM. It's going to be the standard scholarly Greek New Testament from which then the manual Greek New Testaments that are used, for example, the Nestle-Aland text, the UBS text that are used in seminaries, Bible colleges, things like that, they will be based on ECM. And in Jude 5, when they did the book of Jude, we've known for a long, long time that there was a textual variant, that most manuscripts said the Lord delivered a people out of Egypt, but other manuscripts said Jesus delivered a people out of Egypt. Once CBGM analysis was done in Jude, it said that tool said that the stronger reading, that the manuscripts that read Jesus have more consistency amongst themselves. Their closest relatives also say Jesus, whereas those that say Lord, not as strong. And so the Nestle-Aland edition, 28th edition, adopted Jesus. Now what's interesting is I know that the NASB 2020 did not. So that's why I say I'm pretty certain the NASB 95 said Lord, and I'm very certain that the 2020 says Lord, but the Legacy Standard Bible has Jesus. And so I'm almost wondering if somebody over there who did that work would be interested in chatting about, will the Legacy Standard Bible in the future, because my assumption is the translation group, normally it's a translation committee, but this is not really I'm not sure if they're calling it translation committee. I don't know. But whoever is in charge of making these decisions, editorial decisions and textual decisions, the question I would have would be 3 weeks from now, this is what I'm all excited about, the Gospel of Mark will be released in the ECM, and hence the CBGM data modules will be available for all of us to use across the world. And in fact, downloadable. There'll be programs you can actually now download to do stuff locally on your own computer and things like that. I'm going to have a real learning curve catching up with all the additions they've made. But the point is, I've been waiting personally for Mark to come out for 2 years. When I visited Münster, Germany in January of 2019, I was told it was done. And I think what happened was COVID just really delayed it a whole lot, as is the case with everything these days. You can't even get a license plate anymore. I don't think that's COVID. I think that's called socialism, but that's another issue. But it's finally coming out. Pre-orders, I think you can start ordering it on the 26th of this month. And of course, we will be ordering it on the 26th of this month, I can assure you. And so the question I have is, for example, there's a really fascinating textual variant at Mark 1:1, whether the Son of God is there. And people have already done some CBGM-like studies on that and have come to the conclusion that it probably will say that the longer ending has the better substantiation in the CBGM data. But will the Legacy Standard Bible, how are they going to deal with future editions? Because you haven't even put out the full Bible yet. All you've got is the New Testament and Psalms. I think they said Jonah just became available. I think I saw something online about that. John is supposed to come out eventually. It's being done in Birmingham rather than Münster. And given that they went with the CBGM reading and data at Jude 5, will they do the same thing with Mark and then with John, and then as the rest of the New Testament is released, as the work is ongoing, though probably delayed, in Münster? That will be really interesting to know. And same thing with ESV and with other modern translations where the translation committees are still active. Because what I've heard is once Mark is out, and maybe one more before they will do another edition of Nession, go to the 29th edition from the current 28th. And if anyone's going, well, wait a minute, don't you have that super awesome post-tenebris lux Jeffrey Rice rebind of a 28th edition of the Nession? What are you going to do now that this other stuff is coming out? It's real easy. Oh no, I'm not. No. Rich said send it. Said nope. I have markers, and I will go through and I will mark any of the changes, and I'll have a special color for it, and I'll mark it down in the data, and then I'll have it'll still be nice and up to date, but doesn't have to be rebound or anything like that in the process. So that's the plan, anyways. I mean, I haven't done that with the pastorals yet, but I need to. Well, actually, that represented the pastorals. I still have to do it next. But anyway, so the question is, will these translation committees make changes in their translation? Now, this is not changes in the Bible. You're gonna. I suppose it's good that we're talking about this. Once this comes out in 3 weeks, I've said for 2.5, 3 years now that once Mark comes out, you're going to start hearing about CBGM in the press, whether it's Christian press or even outside the Christian press. You're going to hear about changes in the Bible and all the rest of this stuff. And people who just don't know the process whereby we get the New Testament. They don't understand collating manuscripts and all the rest of that kind of stuff that we've spent so much time in this program discussing in the past. It's real easy for them to use extremely inaccurate language that is extremely misleading. For example, that reading, Lord and Jesus, those are the two options. We've known about this reading for hundreds of years, if not, I don't know the first commentary in history that mentions it. But it's been known for a very, 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 very long time. So it's not like we're coming along and saying, well, we need to change something in the Bible. That you can't change the Bible. The Bible exists in the body of manuscripts that are available to us. The issue is the interpretation of that data. And it's a massive amount of data. That is a good thing. It is a good thing to have a massive amount of data versus having a small amount of data, okay? There are people who study other books of antiquity that look at us who work with the New Testament and go, what are you people complaining about? We would love to have 1/10 of what you have. And that's true. There's truth there. So you're going to start hearing it. And so let us head that off right here. It's not a matter of changing anything. Because you see, if we look at the New American Standard Bible, when Jude 5 was translated in 1977 initially, well, it's obviously done probably just a little bit before that, but 1977 edition of the NASB. That's my favorite. That's the one I use. The translators who translated that text had in front of them Greek texts that had kurios as the main reading, but they all saw the little symbol next to it, and they all looked down, and everyone who worked on Jude was well aware of the fact that there were a number of manuscripts that said Jesus. Now, they went with the text reading of the Nestle on the 28th, but they knew that there were manuscripts that said Jesus. And what bothers some people, really bothers them, you can tell when you talk to them, these traditional text people and stuff like that. What really bothers them is that anyone could look at the data, could recognize these manuscripts say Lord, these manuscripts say Jesus, and then have the thought in their mind, yes, further light could be shed on this reading in the future. And most of the time, if you say something like that, someone's like, well, yeah, we might find the original of Jude. No, we're not going to find the original of Jude. But we could find a very early papyri fragment of Jude that might go back to, the early 2nd century, maybe into the 1st century. That'd be awesome. That'd be wonderful. That'd be great. We'd want to find something like that. Well, okay, those folks wouldn't. Those folks don't want anything found anymore. That's the problem with the traditional text position, is they don't want anything new found. They've already got what they want. And anything, if you found a wonderfully preserved fragment of Jude that had Jesus in it, because that's not the traditional text. That's not the TR reading. To them, that's a problem. They don't want to have, for the rest of us, we're like, wow, this is awesome. And even the earliest fragment we have of Jude anywhere. Because see, the earliest we have right now is P72. And that's from around 180, 200, somewhere around in there. So I think it'd be awesome, most of us think it'd be awesome, to be able to push that testimony to Jude back 100 years. That's a good thing. Not for them. It's a bad thing. Because what it read back then doesn't matter. That's not the issue. We have what we want in the traditional text. Don't bother us with anything else. And so these folks are they really struggle to understand why someone could look at this text and go, wow, here's the two readings. This looks like the strongest reading, so we're going to go with this. We're going to put a footnote in that says some manuscripts say this, and a lot of those folks say, you're just casting doubt on the Word of God. No, you're telling the truth about the Word of God. You're telling the truth about how God has transmitted his text to us. It's just the facts. It's just the reality. And then be open to the idea that now along comes CBGM, and maybe, just maybe, CBGM can cast some light on this particular variant that we didn't have from other sources. And in doing so, causes people to go, yeah, Jesus seems to be the stronger reading here. Now, by the way, they're both Orthodox readings. Jesus is fascinating because it would present the deity of Christ in an even stronger way than Lord does, even though Lord presents it because that's who we're talking about in the context if you read Jude 4. But be it as it may, there are people who just jump up and down and get really upset and angry when we even raise issues like this. And so I'm going to be interested in finding out what some of the translation committees are going to do. What about the ESV? What about future editions of the ESV? Because ESV did adopt Jesus a number of years ago. And so what about Mark 1:1? And what about, because like I said, once Mark comes out, once a gospel, Jude, not most people's favorite book of the New Testament, but once you start, let's say there's a variant somewhere in Mark where the CBGM changes the consensus reading in the Nestle-Aland 28th edition, and especially if it results in something that was in the Nestle-Aland 28th now being put in the note rather than being in the main text. But if it went either way, you're going to hear news about it, and it will probably be reported to you improperly. You just on almost any of these things, I'll be honest with you, the number of quote-unquote journalists who would have a clue about how to accurately describe CBGM databases and the process of coherence and all the attestation that is needed. I don't know of any. I'll be honest with you. I don't know of a one. So just don't jump into panic because I'm going to tell you something. The information.